Padre Pio is my favorite saint, and I was blessed to have a 30-minute interview with Angelo, a man whose godfather was Padre Pio's assistant for 25 years. They were so close that a plaque of him is outside of Padre Pio's room to this day. In this video, we'll cover stories on Padre Pio knowing people's sins, his ability to bilocate, other miracles I'm sure you've never heard from Angelo's godfather, his ability to speak several languages that he didn't know, and the spiritual warfare he underwent. First, we'll start with his ability to know people's sins. People would wait in line for days for Padre Pio to hear their confession, as he had a grace to know their sins and really help them have a full confession. One example is Joe Greco. He had a dream where he met Padre Pio and asked him to pray for his father. His father was healed, and he visited Padre Pio to thank him. Here's what he said.
When he saw me, he said, "Well, your father's all right then." Well, this shattered me really, because I'd never been down in San Giovanni Rotondo before. I'd never been down that part of the world. Neither did I know anyone down there. I posed in my mind a question to him. I was saying, "Was it you? Was it you?" And he replied, "In the dream. In the dream." Well, I started shaking. I was scared stiff, to tell you the truth. I said, "Yes, Father, in the dream, Father." I told him my sins, and before he gave me absolution, he said to me, "Now then, there is something else, you know." I says, "Well, Father," I said, "I can't remember anything else."
Padre Pio then described an incident with a girl in the park when he first joined the army.
I was so embarrassed. Oh dear. I said, "Yes, Father, it all comes back to me, and I'm afraid I forgot to tell it in confession. So ashamed." Well, he said, "You've been carrying this sin around with you," he says, "ever since 1941. And the place was black-burned."
Here we see that Padre Pio's prayers helped his dad heal. He knew that he was in this man's dream, and he knew the details of this man's sin, and that it had been from 1941 and in the city that it occurred in. That is pretty supernatural. Now, another story that's very popular with Padre Pio knowing someone's sins is this woman. She went to confession, and Padre Pio said, "You're forgetting a sin. Go say a rosary and come back, and then you might remember." Second time, same thing. So she went and came back, and by the third time, she was pretty frustrated, and he said, "Close your eyes." So she closed her eyes, and he said, "What do you see?" And she said, "It looks like the Pope and Jesus, but I don't know who the Pope is." And he said, "That would have been your son if you didn't choose to abort him." How amazing that he knew this, that God showed him this and was able to soften her heart enough to remember that. She confessed her sins and God forgave her. Angelo's godfather was telling him, the friars came over and said, "Why were you so harsh to her?" And he said, "The Holy Spirit revealed to me that I needed to be more harsh to her and, not gentle in my approach, because that was the only thing that worked. We're all made uniquely and we react differently to different things." So God gave him that wisdom. So thanks be to God for that. Next, we'll cover his ability to bilocate. Padre Pio is known for bilocating, which means being in two places at the same time. So for us, that's unimaginable, but for God, all things are possible. One instance where he did this was when his superiors were making a decision on his future. So many of you may know that Padre Pio was suppressed by his superiors. They didn't allow him to say Mass in public and things like this, and they brought this to the Pope to make the decision, and all of a sudden, a monk came in, and he went up to the Pope and said, "Please don't do this." And then he left. And they all knew that that was Padre Pio. They asked the guards, "Who was that?" And they said, "We didn't see anyone." And they reached out to the friary, and they said, "Yes, Padre Pio was here with all the other friars praying Vespers." So he was in Rome and San Giovanni Rotondo at the same time. How is that possible? God is amazing for allowing that to occur. And who knows, maybe if that didn't happen, maybe he wouldn't have been able to bring as many souls closer to Christ as he had. That's a story I'd never heard before and wanted to share it with you, so hopefully you'll share it with others. We'll now look at some of the stories from Angelo's godfather. The first one I find is pretty funny. So Padre Pio assigned Angelo's godfather to wear this belt that had these little metal things on it that wouldn't necessarily cut you, but it would cause some discomfort to help make reparation for sins. So he went home, and that night his wife saw that he was wearing that, and she was like, "What are you doing? What's Padre Pio putting you up to now? Take that off, take that off." So the next day, without saying a word to Padre Pio said, "Take it off. I don't want you wearing it. I heard all that happened last night with your wife. All night she was saying these things and all this stuff." So even on that realm, being remote, not hearing anything about this, he knew what was going on. There's this spiritual world, and our guardian angels are real. His wife's guardian angel communicated to Padre Pio's guardian angel, and he knew that was not going to fly. So that's a great one. The other story that I find amazing that Angelo actually verified firsthand was related to a scab from Padre Pio. One day, one of his scabs fell on the ground, and Angelo's godfather said, "Oh, what should I do with this?" And Padre Pio said, "Just throw it away." He said, "No, I really want to keep this." And he said, "All right, but on the day you die, it's going to disappear." So what happened was he put it in a frame in his house, and Angelo said when he was growing up as a kid, he always liked to sneak in and see the scab of Padre Pio. You know, it was, I guess, a great relic to have. And the day of the funeral of his godfather, that morning before the funeral, it had shrunk in size. And after the funeral, it was completely gone. So this was stapled in together, very well secured. So there was no way for someone to just take a piece and then take it away. And he was amazed with what he saw in his eyes. And you can hear him firsthand in that video interview we did together. Padre Pio was also known to speak languages that he didn't know. There was a time during the war that the Americans were going to bomb San Giovanni Rotondo, and Padre Pio appeared as this flying monk in the sky saying, "Leave, turn around." And this scared the pilots so much that they turned around and never bombed that city. It's amazing to think that he was able to communicate this as he only spoke Latin and Italian. And there's a great story that I heard where there was a girl that went to confession to him. She was from America, and her parents said, "I'm not sure what you're going to do because you don't know any Latin or Italian." So she went into confession and came out, and the parents said, "So what happened?" And she said, "What do you mean? He spoke English the whole time." So it's amazing. God can do anything. Many people know that Padre Pio was beaten by the devil, and unfortunately, Angelo's godfather was able to witness this firsthand. There's one instance where they were leaving Padre Pio's cell one day, and the door slammed shut, and they weren't able to open it. They got all the friars to try to open it, and they heard Padre Pio being beaten with a chain. When the beating stopped, they were able to open the door, and Padre Pio was bleeding out terribly, and they weren't able to find the chain. So unfortunately, these things did occur as a punishment for the great work that he was doing. The devil was not happy with him. These are amazing stories and miracles that Padre Pio performed through the grace of God, and I hope that you've enjoyed these. Please like this video if you did and share it with others. I would like to make a science version of this where you actually look at the canonization miracles and things like that. So if you'd like that, just comment below. Have a blessed day, and God love you.